Good evening, everyone. I think my voice is going to take a minute to trickle out into the other room, so if I could just ask everybody in the antechamber and the overflow room and we're just going to call the meeting to order. I'm not sure, do we have the audio going in the outside? We're checked? Okay. I just want to start the meeting as we always do by acknowledging that we gather on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish people, specifically. Oh. Okay, I will speak up. Apparently that was these microphones all have different sensitivities. I will do my best to project. Just want to start the meeting by acknowledging that we gather on the traditional territories of the Coast and Strait Salish people, and specifically we recognize the Lekwungen-speaking people, known today as the Songhees and Kasapsum nations, and just that the connections to these lands and adjoining waters continues to this day. We have a very simple agenda, but a big one tonight. Can I have approval of the agenda? Moved, seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Not opposed. I have a few more remarks this evening. We obviously have a large task ahead of us this evening. We'll be advancing changes to the official community plan, which is the community's vision document for what we want Oak Bay to look like over the coming couple of decades. This is a document that is now required to be updated every 5 years, so it's helpful to see this as a journey of change, not a final destination. While we don't have to address all the housing options tonight, we do need to advance a significant portion of the work. I do want to thank staff for doing an enormous amount of work in a short time to get this report back to us for direction. I think it's helpful for everybody to understand procedurally where we're at in this process. So we're going to this council will give direction tonight. Then that will lead staff to go away and create a draft official community plan and draft bylaws that will come back to council for review in a couple of weeks. And then at that point, we'll do first and second reading of those. Once those are passed, they will then go for public hearing. So that's likely in the first week of December. After the public hearing, they will be considered for adoption. And our goal is to have that done before the end of the year. Tonight, there is not public input. And I do just want to recognize that although we recognize we got a couple of hundred emails over the weekend, so it's not like there's no public input, but no verbal input at the meeting tonight. There's quite a few people who are in overflow, and I do just want to acknowledge if people want to be here, we welcome you here, but we have to have standing room for egress purposes. And so if people want to watch this, we do live stream it. So you can go home and just go to the agenda and you can watch the live stream, and you'll have the same access to the same audio and visuals you see on the screens here. So I know for some that might be good. Now I appreciate there aren't the ability to throw tomatoes or flowers at us in the course of this if you do that, but it is an option available to you. With that, I want to acknowledge that there is, we certainly heard considerable concern, anxiety, anger, and I think hope from the community on some of these potential changes. So I guess what I just wanted to start this meeting with was that, council does hear your voices. Our decision is more than policy. We're dealing with not just houses, but homes. I think we all feel that. In Oak Bay, many of these homes have generations of families, and it's a place of safety and peace and friendliness that we have in our community. So these have personal impacts, and I think just want you to know that we hear from you that's the concern that you've expressed to us. I do want to just acknowledge that we have very tight timelines, and we have housing targets set by the province, and some of those have added to that anxiety. I do sort of regret that. I think the official community plan should be an opportunity for us to build a vision for our community together, and just the timelines of this process have, I think, ended with, we haven't had quite the same opportunity to do that. That being said, I'm going to say the community engagement to date has been very robust. We have hundreds of emails still coming in, and an opportunity for more, obviously, and a public hearing going forward. It's incredibly valuable to us in our decision-making process. I just want you to hear that. We couldn't reflect the will of the community in our decision and debate tonight if we didn't hear from the community. So thank you all for those of you who have written, and when we get to public hearing, we'll look forward to the input at that point as well. I also just want to acknowledge that whatever we decide, we're not going to alleviate all the concerns or meet every goal that people have within this document. but we will definitely be closer to the right decision thanks to the input that we've received. This council, I do appreciate it always undertakes our debate very respectfully. This is an emotional topic. I think we all feel aspects of this, hopes, dreams, fears, etc. So I know I'm going to sort of call on council to be, as we go through this debate, there are things that we feel passionately about. We're going to have that respectfully. I'm going to ask the same of the audience. Sometimes it's there's an urge there to cheer or boo and so forth. I just appreciate if you could, if we can just allow all of the debate to happen in a respectful way. We do appreciate that. I do also just want to say that council, this has been a real priority of council this term. We started off with housing as a priority. We've been committed to infill housing long before the province stepped in, and those legislative changes obviously have shifted power away from our process onto what the province wanted to do, and more of that decision making and control into the provincial cabinet. And part of that legislation has included a provincial formula to determine housing need in all of our communities. So this is legislation that does require us to address the 2025 official community plan to provide for the 20-year growth targets that they have set for us. In Oak Bay, that is an almost 50% growth, about 3,761 new units in the community, or 188 net new units per year for the next 20 years. And it seems like a bit of a stretch target, I'm not going to lie, especially for a fully built out community. But I think we need to, and I think understanding that and the rationale for some of the things that we're going to be considering, we do need to provide allowance for more than just that zoning allowance to make sure that we can realistically have a chance of meeting that target. I think I just wanted to make a little bit of context for this as well, because I think it's easy to forget where we've come from and where we're trying to get to. When I joined council back in 2011, we had an older OCP, and the theoretical growth contained within that official community plan was in the maybe 100 or 200 units. It was really kind of just reflected what we had as a community. There was a refresh of that in 2014, and that created a new theoretical capacity of around 2,600 new units. We added secondary suites in 2021. That added another capacity of for another 6,000 on top of that. That was actually pre-zoned. The fourplex legislation that's now in place in Oak Bay, in compliance with provincial regulation, sets that capacity in excess of 18,000 overall. So, and most of that is pre-zoned. That's suites and fourplexes. Now with UVic's revised interest in developing a Cedar Hill Corners property, we'll have an embedded capacity of around 21,000 new units. So between UVic, the 333 housing units that have been approved or are in the pipeline currently, that puts us at about 89% of our 20-year housing target if that all goes forward. That being said, UVic is not a slam dunk, and I think what we started this process many years ago, our intention was to find housing forms that met the needs of the community. So we're still in that process of things. Tonight, all of the options here add a potential for up to 3,200 more unit capacity for consideration. With that, I'm just going to ask, tonight, all of council, and I think all of us together thinking, what we need to decide tonight is, I think what we were asking when we started our infill program. What forms of housing do we want to prioritize, and where do we want to prioritize that new housing? In short, I just want to direct the OCP to achieve what we want the community to look like for our friends, our neighbors, our future neighbors, and ours and their children. I know there's also some concern about the province running a bit roughshod over municipal rules or powers. I'm just going to say I think it's our job tonight to do what we do still have delegated authority to do. We can make the decisions. The province always has a right to supersede, but they traditionally have not done that. So we should do what we think is right, what our residents and businesses want, what will achieve meaningful changes that still preserves what is great about our community. That's it. We have a lot to get through. I'm going to suggest some courses of action as we go forward. I'm going to try and advance some motions that allows for a structured debate tonight. There's probably quite a few questions. If any of you tried to read the document, it's an absolutely massive document, and so we spent the weekend, like probably many of you have, reading through it. I'm going to ask my usual request of council, but it's probably even more meaningful tonight. As we ask questions, try to think of the questions that you require the answers to help make decisions. And trying to keep questions as short and concise as possible. With that, I will now move on to the special meeting matters before us this evening. Item number 1 is 4.1, and this is the official community plan and zoning bylaw update. This is a summary of the Phase 3 engagement. Mr. Bowl, I believe you're doing, do you wish to do any introduction, or this is essentially a motion to receive the report? So if you wish to do an introduction, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I'll go to questions and then get to a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. For each of these reports, we do have presentation material available if time and interests allow. We also have, for later in the discussion, inset maps that could be put on the screen if council wanted to discuss certain areas. But specific for this report, I don't have any further introduction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is probably the simplest matter, which is we've undertaken engagement to date, and this is a report coming out of that. Very fulsome. Is there any questions from members of council before I get a motion to receive? Go ahead, Councillor Smart.
Thank you. I guess I could ask them after receipt, or I could ask them now, but I just wanted to ask a couple of questions through you, Mayor, to staff. And one of them was, there was a mention of holding a potential information night prior to the public hearing. And I just wanted to understand that if council were to make a motion to add an information night, would that delay the timeline to complete the work under our legal timeline? Thank you.
Yeah, I think our microphones are having a hard time tonight, but the question was just whether or not there was a possibility of adding a public information session prior to the public hearing. Is that correct? To staff? Mr. Bowl?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. That suggestion is specifically made for the zoning bylaw and based on those recommendations that are coming forward there. So right now, with the timeline till the end of the year, we won't have time for that. But specifically for the zoning bylaw, which is later on, we could do that. That's one of the reasons why that is raised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Smart, you had said I had a second question?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to staff. My question was just with regards to a comment from Parks and Rec in the engagement report around creating a biodiversity policy about enhancing and maintaining our corridors. And I just wanted to know if that was something that staff have logged to bring back at a future date, or if it's something that council would need to bring forward as a future motion. I just didn't want that detail to get lost. Thank you.
Mr. Green?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council.
I'm going to ask you just move the microphone a bit closer to your mouth and then, yeah.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. So we're not proposing any new development permit areas. What we're proposing in relation to essentially the natural environment DPAs, which are the foreshore and the essentially the streams, DPAs, updating those guidelines specifically in relation to those DPAs, but we're not proposing this as part of this update any changes to those DPA areas in relation to natural environment.
Thank you. Seek a motion. Oh, questions still. Go ahead, Councillor Green and then Watson.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to ask a question. This engagement report of this summary, of course, deals with the Phase 3 engagement, but I wanted to understand just a little bit, just in, postage stamp summary, how relatively the level of engagement and the nature of the participation changed from Phase 2 to Phase 3, because we've had two very robust sets of activities that have involved surveys and open houses and discussions and boards. How could you compare and contrast, just in a sentence or two, Phase 2 versus Phase 3?
That may be a motion, a question for the consultants who help manage that. I'm not sure who would like to speak to that, but I'll let someone jump in. Is someone from Otis online able to answer the question about the difference between the Phase 1 and Phase 2 participation? There we go, Mr. Bars, welcome.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of Council. Thank you for the question. For Phase 2, we presented the three different scenarios, three different land use scenarios, and we got robust feedback on preferences for those scenarios. If you recall, the top preference was for the village-centered scenario, where we focused growth around the villages. Shortly behind that was the transit.
Thank you.
Please let me know if there's any follow-up.
Yes, just a very quick follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Bars. What was numerically, how did the two phases compare in terms of the number of citizens who participated, phase 2 versus phase 3? Thank you.
I'm going to ask my colleague True Taylor to answer that question.
Welcome, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Rob, and good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, in phase 2, there were, just a quick snapshot, about 832 submissions for the public questionnaire that we ran back through May and June. About 500 attendees to the 4 community events that Rob had mentioned. We received about 26 written emails. And then comparing that to phase 3 that we just recently completed, we had over 1,000 public questionnaire responses, around the same number of attendees to the 2 public open house events. We had over 300 views of the presentation, and again, around 25, 26 written letters or correspondence sent over.
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
The last on my current speaking list is Councillor Green. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, and thank you for the report. Appreciate it. On the front page, page 1 of the Phase 3 engagement summary, at the bottom of the paragraph before background historic context, it says, this engagement effort concludes community engagement on how to accommodate the 20-year housing needs in the OCP and zoning bylaws, official community plan and zoning bylaws. And my only concern about that kind of leapt off the page for me, that there would be no more community engagement in the foreseeable future. And my question is then, in the Phase 3 engagement summary report, page 1, can we create a meaningful engagement strategy with the community on the 20-year housing plan as it rolls out? So over time, would it not be possible to engage the community as this plan takes effect? Thank you.
Probably helpful for us to understand what the legislative framework gives us in terms of options for that, whether it's zoned or pre-zoned or not pre-zoned. Go ahead, Mr. Bull.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the comment in the report is specific to this project and the plan that we set out earlier this year for this project, and that has to do with the timeline. So by the end of the year, in some shape or form, we have to complete the official community plan update and consider changes to the zoning bylaw. But the details are up to you, of course. Down the road, and also looking forward, there's already some recommended next work in the future anyway. If there's an ongoing or next step future engagement, that would be up to council to think about and see if there's a follow-up to whatever changes are made this year and whatever work is done in the future to continue to engage, of course, with the community. That's a separate new effort, so to say, that could be planned and resourced. Thank you.
Mr. Bull. Go ahead, Councillor Green.
So supplemental through you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bull. So it is possible for council to take control or take charge of the community engagement process and framework over time. So these timelines would not affect our ability to then work with our community as this plan rolls out. Thank you.
Thank you. I just need a motion to receive then. Not seeing any other hands for questions.
Move receipt.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any other discussion before I call the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries. Thank you for that, and thank you for all the engagement work. We now move to item 4.2. This is definitely the meatier part of the meeting than 4.1. So I think you do have a presentation, Mr. Bull, to provide, or staff. You can hand it over to staff.
Yeah, we could, if council wishes so.
Please.
Yeah. Okay, we'll have my colleague pull that up. And as an introduction, I'll start with an opening comment that for this next item, the official community plan, I'd like to highlight that the focus of that plan is very much on the long term. So that is a plan that looks 20 years and beyond for the future of the district. It's a very important plan because a lot of other planning that the district does over time for infrastructure, for facilities, financial planning, they're all based on the official community plan. So even if the policies and ideas in the plan are not implemented right away, they do inform long-term planning. So that's an important thing to note. Who is going to take the lead on this one? Myself? All right. Thank you. Next slide, please.
This looks like it's, oh, it's okay. I think we're not doing the phase 3 engagement summary, but.
That's right.
it's
Yeah, so
okay.
we're focused on the middle part. This is one big presentation for all, that's why. So for the revised draft OCP, we have slides for you about the land use framework, the policies, and the development permit area changes. Next slide. I think we need to slip to the other section. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is very short then. Okay, thank you. Let me see, we have a couple of attachments to this report. Attachment A is the one that we are recommending. It is a revised land use framework, revised following public engagement, particularly changing the type of new housing types. We recommend to base the OCP bylaw on that. Second recommendation is about policies and development permit area guidelines. Those are two other separate components of the official community plan. The policies guide council's decisions over time, and currently we still have to draft the directions and draft policy ideas from September that are also included in today's package. And for the development permit area guidelines, those guidelines provide context for new development, and there's proposed updated sets of development permit guidelines attached to the report as well in attachment E. Thirdly, there are new tools available to us, and even though we have prioritized amenity cost charges and development cost charges earlier this year, and this project, of course, optimization of development processes, there's still other work that we can do, and we recommend to do that in the future, particularly on the topic of affordable housing, and to create a more fulsome strategy for that. And finally, but definitely not lastly, or leastly, a servicing study. So we do recommend to based on the new OCP, whatever it contains, to start planning for the infrastructure and see what is needed for our capital plans. Also to make sure our other programs are up to date and start implementing the direction. Thank you.
Is that the conclusion?
Okay, I think there are more slides. Sorry, excuse me, Mayor.
No problem.
This is a very fresh presentation. Next slide, please. That's the next section. So this was the completion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And just as a reminder, I sent out a suggestion that we actually, in terms of motions, go through starting with number 4, then 2, then 3, then 1. Just in terms of the simplicity of the ask, I think is easiest to support in that order. And I think the meat of this is really wrapped around, as we talked about, the OCP bylaw amendments. So with that, on any aspect of 4.2, I'm sure there's some questions. So I'm happy to go around the table and take any questions on the report in front of us here for 4.2. Questions? Go ahead, Councillor Watson. Oh, okay. I saw you first, but we're also very polite. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson, and then to Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mayor. We are, after all, Canadians, and we are polite. So thank you so much. Thanks for the report. It was a lot to absorb over the weekend, but a couple of questions that have come to me, and so I am passing them along also. We talk in the reports about theoretical capacity, which my understanding, of course, that's land to buildings, versus land carrying capacity. And does land carrying capacity come into any of the discussions, either with provincial representatives or within the staff? So just.
Sure, I'll give that to Mr. Bowl, and you can, again, farm it out as you see fit.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to clarify, is the question about capacity versus the build-out, as we refer to in the report, or specifically to, you mentioned a different term, Councillor. Thank you.
Yes, I did. Thank you, if I may, through you, Mayor. Yeah, the theoretical capacity, I think, is described quite appropriately in here as really being kind of land to buildings. But there is also, and it has been raised by many in the community, about the land carrying capacity, which is something different, and that is you know, the different impacts that will be on food production or water usage and just all of the things that are necessary in order to be able to, in fact, support the theoretical capacity of the building units. Does that come into play at any point with members of the provincial government when we're discussing these things?
Thank you, Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think it's fair to say that the focus has very much been on housing production, and that's why we have the timelines we have, the housing target order, and there's less attention to other matters that inform capacity of communities to absorb it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bull. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that response, Mr. Bull. On page 7 of the report, it states that the OCP land use framework is a future planning guiding document that will be used to inform strategies like, for example, with the school district, Island Health, BC Transit. But I'm wondering if it's feasible in actual fact to rely on housing types and numbers of units to inform the strategies without having the demographic metrics to identify what the needs are. Certainly in a mature community and with an aging population, the needs might be quite different from a growing community of young families, which would rely heavily. The latter one would need, schools might be more of a priority, and the first ones, perhaps the medical facilities would. So how do we do it without understanding what the demographics that we're targeting are?
Mr. Bull?
Thank you for your worship. A lot of planning, long-term planning, not just city planning, but also schools or other types of planning that are not all within the district, rely on census data and other demographic data. And that might change, it always is changing a little bit over time, not very fast lately, or in the recent past at least. That is something that over time, from time to time, every 5 years in the future, municipalities will be required to update the official community plan. And that it is actually aligned with the census data and the availability of new data coming forward. So I think the best answer there is that it's something that from time to time will need to be recalibrated. And because, we don't know for sure what the population makeup will be in 20 years from now. Thank you.
Councillor Watson, or Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for that explanation, Mr. Bull. Could you, also in the report, it does talk about statements on infrastructure modeling and funding, and I am wondering if you could expand on that as to when and how that might take place when we make decisions tonight.
Sure. So for infrastructure modeling, do we wish to take that, Mr. Bull, or you may hand it off to Mr. Rennick at some point?
Yeah, I think Mr. Rennick can probably best answer that. Thanks.
Mr. Rennick, the question, if I didn't catch it, was just, did you catch it?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
There is some discussion in the agenda under 4.3 regarding doing the infrastructure analysis, but based on the question coming from Councillor Patterson right now, I'm happy to answer it now. The time that it would take to run these potential scenarios through our infrastructure models, we're talking an approximate 3 to 6 month period, basically to provide that information to the consultants, get draft reports, review them, finalize them, etc.
Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Patterson?
Yes, just a couple more. On page 9, it talks about tree disturbance is expected to be about 5% of the canopy. I'm just wondering if that is municipal and private, or kind of overall, if we could just clarify that.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Do we have that information at hand? Would I go to Mr. Modis? Sure. Welcome back, Mr. Bars. Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Yes, thank you for that. That's clarifies a little, little more. I thought 5% seemed low. So, but if it doesn't include the municipal property, that explains why that number is low. I guess the last point that I will ask about, and that is page 2 does focus on sort of new apartment buildings along transit routes, and this is something I've spoken about before, but will we, within this modeling, be taking a more holistic approach to active transportation? Because really a lot of what is in these reports is about transit and pedestrian infrastructure connections. And that is something that has not been really brought into this modeling.
Mr. Bull, can you just be a little clearer in what the actual question is to staff?
Yes, throughout the reports, we refer to active transportation, but then in other parts of the report, we talk about locating higher density housing impacts along transit and pedestrian corridors. And yet we have split the active transportation, so we've got the sidewalk and pedestrian in one place, we've got cycling lanes really in another. And so when we use both terms in these reports, and this one seems to be more focused on transportation corridors, and although I don't, as a pedestrian user, consider ours to be transportation corridors because the buses run very intermittently on some of them. But so what I want to ensure is when we go through this, when we are talking about active transportation and we're talking about transit and pedestrian, that we are looking at it holistically as sort of non-vehicle transportation.
Okay. Mr. Bull, it's half steep and half a question, but I'll let you respond.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, the land use concepts were more based on higher level principles, and that's where transit became definitely was one of the prominent free scenarios. In terms of the more detailed modeling, that is more dealt with as part of the zoning bylaw report. I'm not sure if our colleagues, the consultants, could comment on whether that was part of the modeling. I thought it might have been in the different criteria that have been evaluated, but Mr. Bars could maybe clarify.
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Bars. Thank you, Mr. Bars. I have next on my speaking list Watson and Braithwaite. And I have Smart, Appleton, Green.
Thank you, Mayor, and this will be to whoever on staff or maybe the consultants. And going from this high-level policy questions, this is very down into the weeds, but I did want to ask about a couple of things in the housing policies. That was H.5. We're into the appendices now. And also in reference to the Mulholland Parker analysis, which is part of attachment D of this part of our meeting tonight, this section of the report. I just wanted to check in about something I think I understood from that land economics analysis, which was, I think, one of a really helpful piece of work that we were provided with. The consultants seem to indicate that for SMU, the small-scale multi-unit housing, that that the FARs, that the floor area ratios that are currently suggested are too low for viability in residential neighborhoods for this housing, for much of this housing to be realized. And I just wanted confirmation if I am reading that correctly or not. It sounded like from the analysis of at least the 21 sites that were specifically picked that it would be dangerous for us to rely on that as meeting a lot of what we would hope to achieve in both the 5 and further out even the 20-year targets. So I'd just like some commentary on that, please, first of all.
Sure, I'm not sure. I'll give that to Mr. Bowl. You're welcome to give it to the consultants as you see fit.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And through you, there is indeed information in the attachment there, and it shows it's. I think the term it uses is marginally viable, so it means it can be viable, may not be. It's still that is an indication on a couple of test sites. We do see projects coming forward, so in some sites it is apparently viable enough for people. Maybe Mr. Bars could also offer additional comments, but I think it gives a general indication that it's not that attractive compared to other types that are very viable or viable. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Bars?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So the analysis that was done by our colleagues Mulholland Parker looked at, as you know, a range of different sites across the whole community, and also looked at a range of potential densities of housing on those various sites. The findings show that there's a lot of variability in the viability, and so in some cases we're seeing
Watson?
follow-up if necessary.
No, thank you. I'm staying within the sort of infill, the majority of the community, the R1 to R15 sites, and the proposals going forward to keep things as they are, but add development permit guidelines. One of the things that's recommended in the housing policies is to limit or prevent, I guess, it sounds like strata titling within the residential neighborhoods when owners do small-scale units. They're like 2, 3, or even 4. And I wondered what the policy rationale for that was, please.
Mr. Bars, I think it goes back to you. Sure, I'll give it to Mr. Bull first, and if he wishes to go to you, we'll do that. Go ahead, Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, yeah, that policy H5 on page 22 in the attachment, it's not quite meant for infill housing. That's for larger existing purpose-built rental buildings, and the idea there is to be careful if it's not so much an issue in Oak Bay, but in other municipalities we've seen sometimes a pressure to redevelop sites like that and replace the buildings fully. This is meant to provide the starting point of a policy to consider that carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. It doesn't quite read like that. It reads like it applies to any R1 to R5 lot that an application comes forward.
Okay, Mr. Green?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Watson, perhaps I can also clarify that obviously, if somebody is building an infill project and they clear the existing house and then they build 3 units on that lot, then they can strata title each of those 3 lots, and there is no role for the municipality in the strata titling of those 3 lots. However, a strata conversion, so if somebody retains an existing single-family dwelling and they build an ADU, then if they wish to create a strata title of those 2 units, then they do need to come through a municipal process through a strata conversion process, where there is a role for council to approve or not approve that strata conversion to create those strata lots. And so what that policy is trying to do is to also trying to retain rental housing or units that could be in the rental market, rather than strata titling those units.
Thank you.
And so that is a very similar policy to what City Victoria has recently adopted in relation to their ADUs.
Thank you. I may speak to that a bit later. And then I just have a final question about townhouse costs. I know this is very relevant to the current market and costs, but am I correct in understanding, at least from the analysis, that right now to build a townhouse typically actually costs more per square foot than either multi-unit or single-family residential?
May give that to Mr. Bars, who may have more current market knowledge.
Analysis.
Yes, I'm reading it again from the Mulholland Parker work. Please move on. I'll wait for an answer. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Watson. I'll move then to Councillor Braithwaite, and I have Councillor Smart, Appleton, and Green.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm going to touch on some questions that kind of came up from public input, and that would be in regards to infrastructure. So I'm wondering how staff will confirm before rezoning that water, sewer, and road infrastructure can support projected growth, please.
Mr. Rennick.
Through the mayor, there is a recommendation, again, in the agenda package in 4.3, suggesting that staff undertake a detailed analysis of the impacts of the contemplated land use on the infrastructure. So we have models for all of our underground infrastructure classes that assume a certain future population projection, which was based on the 2014 OCP. And basically what we would do is we would update that population model to reflect whatever future OCP land use scenario council ultimately adopts. That would allow us to see where the specific impacts are of that change from the 2014 land use scenario.
Did that answer it? Go ahead, Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. So it might be the same answer for my next question, and that would be, what safeguards prevent rezonings or site-specific growth approvals from outpacing infrastructure capacity or funding plans?
Mr. Rennick, do you wish to answer that, or?
Just so I'm understanding the question correctly, does that relate to pre-zoning, or does that relate to future zoning bylaw amendments?
Rezonings, or I guess pre-zonings.
We'll go with pre-zonings, Mr. Rennick.
Thank you. Ultimately, under the legislation, a municipality does have the ability to require a developer to cover the financial costs of infrastructure upgrades that are directly required for a given development. But I will say that there is more flexibility to wield those tools ahead of a zoning bylaw amendment than after a parcel has already been pre-zoned.
Thank you for that. Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. And then I'm going to move on to tree retention. How will minimum tree retention and canopy restoration targets be enforced and verified over time, including warranty periods for replacement trees?
Mr. Bull? Or Mr. Green?
Through your worship, obviously there are some tools as part of a development permit where you can require security bonding in relation to a landscaping bond that is required as part of development permit, and within that bonding there is also the ability to withhold bonding for a certain amount of time until, for example, a tree is either 2 or 3 years old, and then further deposits are returned to that developer, depending on that security that was originally provided.
Councillor Braithwaite.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to parking. What evidence thresholds will be required before allowing parking reductions, and how will the transportation demand management plans be evaluated and enforced?
Going to give this probably to Mr. Bowl. You're talking about, again, new developments.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. This is twofold. On the one hand, we have parking rates in our parking facilities bylaw, and but usually for larger projects that come forward for rezoning, a case-by-case review is done for that particular site. I think right now for the official community plan, we don't substantially change parking policies in that regard, I believe. Thank you.
Thanks. So going still on with the parking, will EV-ready requirements be mandatory for developments granted parking reductions?
Go ahead, Mr. Bowl. That may not be.
Thank you.
Regular.
That would also be case by case. So usually in exchange for a reduction in parking, transportation demand management measures are agreed to. EV charging, car share, bicycle parking, those are all kind of elements that could be part of a package that justify that. Thank you.
I think one of the questions that really came out in the public input was how do we ensure that nearby streets are not used to offset inadequate on-site parking in higher density approvals, or can we?
Mr. Bowl.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, these projects still need to provide on-site parking. At least that's how we have done it in the recent past. So that's part of the answer. Of course, with more development in neighborhoods, there will be more traffic and also a bit more street parking of visitors. So, but in essence, though, the required parking for the owners or residents or tenants of the building, that's required to be provided on site. Thank you.
Councillor Braithwaite.
Thanks. I'll ask one more question, and I'll keep the rest of my questions for later. What is the proposed timeline for bringing forward the tenant protection bylaw, which we haven't really touched on yet, and the density bonusing framework and the transportation demand management bylaw relative to the zoning amendments? Do we know that yet?
Mr. Bowl.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, we don't have the confirmed timelines for that. The tenant protection bylaw is going to be discussed later this month as part